Greener from XR today, bringing you the latest in news and conversation from the extended reality space. Today you're tuning into the March 2024 edition of the Big XR News Show. Joining me to discuss some hot industry topics is Amy Peck, the CEO of EndevourXR, Jay Latta, speaker and founder of the Fusionists, Kevin O'Donovan, the co-chair of the VRARA Industrial Metaverse and Digital Twin Committee, and Jennifer Wolfe, the Executive Officer of Learning Technology Standards Committee at the IEEE. And it's a brilliant lineup of speakers we have today. I think with XR today's focus on enterprise-facing immersive technologies, and then more broadly the defining technologies within that, whether it be digital twins, AI, etc. That's a big technology overlap, and the trickle down and the influence of consumer technology that also affects workplace solutions. And I couldn't have asked for a better lineup to discuss all of that. It's a big topic, and it's always a very big thing to unpack each month. So thank you everyone for participating and for joining.
See, now we're all quiet. We were all chatty, I promise. We were all very chatty just before this.
I mean, go from that, Amy. Why don't you kick us off, seeing as you gave us the first words there? One of the biggest news pieces over the past week, and it really drove a lot of interest and engagement with our readers, was Samsung entering the XR device marketplace. News that took place at MWC. Perhaps you could give us some insights into that device entry, and what do you think is the influence of such a large technology firm entering the XR market after a little bit of rumours and speculation?
Well, I think, a lot of it is, kind of coming in hot on the heels of Apple Vision Pro, and that sort of spurred a lot of interest and frankly, the competition monster. But that's a good thing for us, because I think, we all recognize that as good as, well, even Quest 3, frankly, but as good as Apple Vision Pro is, this is still a 1.0 version. And, it signals that we are on this path, like there's no turning back. And also that this idea of mixed reality or spatial computing or whatever we want to call it is going to be far more ubiquitous than VR is going to be. So it makes sense for these companies, it's a long road to get these devices out. And we've still, when was the original DK1? I think it was like 2012. And we're 12 years beyond that. And so I think, the evolution is moving slowly, but I think now this competition is going to ratchet it up. I think, when we start looking at the optics are improving, the tracking is improving. We have, 5G, we have, better network connectivity, and we have better content, right? So those are the ingredients that start to make this actually occur. So I think it's good news all around, and I don't find it that surprising. I think we're going to see some other players start to enter the space in the near term as well. Like Xiaomi as well. They just released their AR glasses at MWC also.
This Samsung announcements. I mean, there have been rumors already before. Of course, the Vision Pro is one of these catalysts that right now made them to accelerate everything a bit more. As we've said already in our previous sessions with you, Apple has set a benchmark. Everyone was so observing it, and now they are coming under their stones into the light. Samsung as well have founded some kind of secret organization within their own entity with 100 high-level experts simply to discuss the next steps. What Amy mentioned with this better content, there was recently quite an interesting post from Canon stating that it's not enough with the view on the Vision Pro, it's not enough to focus on 8K resolution, but for these kind of high-end devices, they need 14K resolution videos. So we are talking here about 100 megapixel. So here, this benchmark has set very, very important lighthouses, and now everyone is trying to somehow to co-develop, to set up their own position in this market. So the box of Pandora is open, and the race simply started. Concerning Samsung, very interesting on their announcements is the partnership with Qualcomm. And here is, for example, something extremely interesting happening. So we can be very curious about the next steps and what will come around.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, and especially that last statement, right? When you look at the announcement and you look at some of the functionality that's mentioned around, not just concurrent cameras, but the ability to actually track human experience and things like that, and the chipsets required around all of that, and I think is really exciting. From an IEEE perspective, we have quite a few standards around learning experience, and particularly because learning is such a use case associated with XR, it's great to see some of the technology get to the point where it really has the sophistication to really take advantage of those standards to their full extent, and give us a very different view. I feel like to date, we've been focusing a lot on the hardware and even the software to some extent, and maybe not as much on the person, which is a critical part of any XR experience. And so I'm really excited about some of these collaborations and just the advancement in the space, because it gives us more of an opportunity to track and deliver a unique experience that actually, changes people's lives, which is what we're trying to do from an XR perspective. So it's pretty exciting.
It's great news, right? Like I'm a Samsung fan. One of the first mixed reality or Windows reality glasses I had was the Samsung, right? So it's not that they're new in this, but it's like, as Jay said, and the Vision Pro is like kind of latest and greatest. But like the day that was announced, that was out of date because somebody else had a better chip or a better sensor or a better something. So they're talking something in 2025. So let's see what they bring. And look at their brand size. Look at the amount of people that buy Samsung stuff around the world. No disrespect to all the smaller companies bringing out headsets, which is great too. But like Samsung will have a ready market and big checkbooks. So I think it's brilliant. And the more competition, and they'll be for different use cases and whatever. But the more the merrier, right? Because I honestly think this bus has left the station, so we will evolve some sort of mixed reality something in the next.
Yeah, and Jennifer, I think you hit the like perfect point. It's like we have to look at the sort of human centric experience, and people haven't cared about these devices because they're cumbersome, they're hard to get into, they're hard to get up on the network, and there's just a lot that can go wrong. And I think with Apple coming into play, it also, and I'd love your opinion, everyone's opinion on this, but there also is something to be said for the walled garden right now, because the beauty of the Apple Vision Pro is you're working on your laptop, you put your Apple Vision Pro on, you look just above it, and whoosh, you have everything right in front of you. And this idea of just picking something up on your mobile device, moving to your laptop, and then going into your headset. And that's going to be challenging to do. And so, what your next, standards operation is going to be around. It's going to be around, this interoperability between these, portals between platforms and, breaking down the walled gardens. But right now, from a, architecture standpoint, there is value to it.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Amy. So I'm at Industrial Immersive here in Houston this week, and the big topic of conversation has been, are we at the tipping point yet? Right. And everybody's got different opinions about that. I can talk about that later. But one of the things that, that I believe, and one of the points that I was making is we're the same person, regardless of what type of immersive experience we're in, right? Throughout the course of our lives, it doesn't matter what device we're in, what application we're working on, we're still the same person. And I don't think we're quite there yet with regards to that interoperability, whereby it's so agnostic that it's more about the person and their continuous experience versus a particular hardware or specific experience.
The thing is, concerning this human centricity, how I call it, currently majority of the companies is simply ignoring our needs. I've been involved into one kind of speech in the defense sector, and one of the most revealing things said by a manager from one of these companies is that they want exclusivity. The industry in general thinks in these exclusivities, in these walled gardens. So interoperability, multimodality is something that we as humans want, but of course this whole industry making cash, especially my very special friend Zug, They try to keep everything and simply to grease down whatever they can get from us. A parallel development is that we or the industry needs to find out how to attract us. And for example, Samsung is quite well set in the whole automotive or mobility space. They've made the new display for the Mini and so on. Qualcomm the same way. They understand this human-centric approach with this digital cockpit, with giving you what you need. Some other companies try to enter this as well. So here right now the whole industry is started to learn a lot about our own needs, about this, how we call it, cocooning, because Amy needs a slightly different view on things than Kevin, than Jennifer, and so on and so on. So here to adapt on our own needs is the next level on how to get customer loyalty, how to give them whatever they need, simply to motivate us to spend money for that crap. So these holistic approaches, not just put on your device, but how will your future device, your notebook, your smartphone, your car behave? If you fly to, let's say, to an event in Austin and so on, you want your content, your personal cocoon to have with you. And this is right now very interesting when you hear these debates about the software-defined vehicle, about the future of travel, future of work, and so on and so on. In all of these events, now these strings come together.
Fantastic. And just going off this point of human-centric technology, or perhaps wanting to aim to be more human-centric, it's this idea that perhaps once this technology, or once these larger groups enter the market, enter the XR device marketplace, that's when perhaps the usability standards and those human-centric usability standards will rise, because it's going from niche corporations focusing on VR and then perhaps focusing on a consumer market who are happy to take on those hurdles of using whatever small hurdles it might be in terms of usability, and then making that as smooth as possible, so your average consumer who isn't interested in taking large steps into getting that experience can do it too. I think smartphones are a great example in terms of gaming, where it goes from niche consumers having to go through these hurdles, connecting something to a TV, to it just being accessible via a smartphone. So I think it's a similar example to that too. Another big company joining the XR device marketplace is LG. They recently went into a strategic partnership with Meta. LG, another company who you've heard rumblings here and there about joining the market. Similar background in terms of going from smartphones to perhaps XR devices. Kevin, would you perhaps be able to kick this one off, and perhaps what are your thoughts on LG joining the marketplace? You had some interesting thoughts on our previous episode about this marketplace isn't just headsets. It could be any form of device translating this spatial XR data, however you want to define it. What are your thoughts on LG?
Again, they're a huge player. They're involved in all parts of the market, because when you dig into them, they make screens and they have components and they have things. They've also had different glasses for years, right? They may not have been the top seller, but they're not new to this world. So again, it's like, okay, so they're partnering with Meta. Meta is one of the big players in the market right now, so why wouldn't they? So again, it's good for the industry that there's more and more competition coming. What I also find fascinating, I was at an energy conference last week, and everyone was about, it's a team sport now. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot more partnerships going on. Like when I was back in the day, you did everything yourself, right? Built it, made it, all bits of it. And you did their competition. And now there's all this like co-opetition, right? Because you're partnering with everybody. So everyone's partnering with everybody. Now there's still little, it's not everybody with everybody. There's little tribes or whatever getting carried. But it really is. But I suppose, Rory, to your point, I started in the world where your personal computer really was a computer. It was a luggable, right? You carried it on wheels because you could hardly lift it. And then we got laptops. It's like, oh my God, this is brilliant. Roll forward, we had mobile phones, then we had smartwatch. So the way we consume things, and my personal device, and my personal device is mine, right? And even if it's the same model, make, and whatever, I personalize it my way. I think we're going to see the same with whatever way we talk about mixed reality. There's going to be different ways of doing it. Some people will use a phone with kind of augmented reality see-through. Some people might have some sort of a headset. Some people don't want a headset. I use different. I'll have headsets that I can. I have a mixed reality view, or I'll be one where I'm completely sealed off. To Jay's point, I'm on a plane. I don't want to see anybody. I just want to be in my own world. So I think if I knew what the answer was, I'd have left and made billions already, right? So I think there's going to be the more devices, the more use cases, the more form factors, the more whatever. I think for the next 5 or 6 years we'll be kind of going, ooh, never thought of that. That's interesting. And whether it's in healthcare or energy or manufacturing or consumer, I think they'll be all different. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Kind of. If there was only one show in town, we'd be all bored.
And I think it's interesting too that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jennifer. Well, just that we haven't seen this a lot, these types of broad partnerships happening between these behemoth, companies. It's a testament to how challenging it is to get the form factor to the magic wayfarers, which is what we all want. And that's not a nod to meta stories. It's really, at the end of the day, we talk about these as being wearable, but they're not wearable. Even the Apple Vision Pro, they've done a beautiful job, but it's still heavy. We're not going to walk around the street with those on. Like, we're going to walk around when they look like fashionable sunglasses. And I've always talked about the way that the two different approaches that companies have made, like Focals by North and even with Google Glass, where they start with a wearable form factor and then they cram as much technology as they can, or you start with where you really want to build these high fidelity, amazing, mixed reality experiences, with spatial anchoring and location awareness, and then you make it as small as you can. And until we bridge that gap, it is going to take billions more. This is not, this is a long game, but it does tell you that, all of these companies know that these next level devices are going to be as ubiquitous as our mobile devices, as our laptops, as and we're going to have all of them, and we're going to move between all of them.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of jump off of what Kevin's shared, and then Amy, it's interesting when we think about some of the consumer entry into the space and what that looks like, and how how it impacts the overall ecosystem, including, industrial types of, or enterprise types of implementations. It's really interesting. I mean, people were bringing up this week, on the heels of the Apple Vision Pro stuff, talking about, remember, bring your own device, right? Within the corporate setting, and how nobody really knew how to handle that. And it was, it kind of created for this moment in time, this really hard thing for IT groups to figure out what they were going to do with, and what policies they were going to set and everything else. And eventually it worked itself out. It's interesting to think about even the consumer impact, and, if bring your own device means bring your own mixed reality device, what does that do? And what are the implications of that? Is there even enough bandwidth to handle that? There's a million different things, right, to think about. On the form factor, I think that's interesting too. And I would agree. I mean, I think that there are different applications, right? I come from energy and mining, where there's a couple different problems. One, we have explosives in the environment, so we need devices that are zone rated. Problem, right? In the mining space, we have a lot of dust, right? So, there's all these different pieces that come with the environment that we haven't necessarily solved for yet. But I think you're right. I mean, I do think, and once again, I think this is a great thing to think about from an interoperability perspective. It's not going to be one device. It's going to be a multitude of devices for different applications. And, the goal really should be that, once again, that human has a continuous experience, regardless of how they're engaging in an immersive world.
I'd like to bring an additional perspective on these partnerships, because this is something what I've experienced in the mobility sector. all of these developments are becoming so expensive and no one really knows in what direction you should go. So right now, setting up partnerships you see this Qualcomm and Samsung partnership. Yay! So of course, LG needs someone as well. Meta needs someone as well. After they fucked it up with their initial announcement to become the Meta, whatever Meta, now they of course reduced their spending. LG, for example, during the ERA Mobility in Munich last year, they've announced yeah, I think it was last year. They've announced the digital cave concept. So means outside of the glasses of these things to bring this experience into your vehicle. Of course, self-driving and so on. So here these players are trying to figure out in what direction they should go, with whom to partner. Okay, if Qualcomm is already occupied and so on, then we do it with someone else. All of these smaller niche players that are trying to develop something and are wasting tons of money. Example, Apple with their Apple Car, now they dumped it, finally. We've seen in the past as well, for example, approaches from Intel to develop an AR headset and then VR headset. All of these failed in a spectacular way. So, of course, currently in these uncertainties, they partner because this is simply sharing the risk. That's simply it is. It's like investing into an investment fund.
And the technology, right? And better technology, like who's got the best optics. You know, it's interesting that, you know, the Samsung device, I think I read that it's falling into their, you know, their sort of television department so they can move quickly. But, you know, will there be some sort of interoperability where you're able to, you know, literally pull something off your screen into your headset, walk around the house, go finish cooking your meal while you're still watching Black Mirror? I don't know if that's a good idea, but, you know, to each his own.
And this is the thing, it needs to happen, Amy. It needs to happen. This is what the customers, what the humans need and want, and not just within your Samsung or LG ecosystem, but you have to take the content from your Samsung device, throw it into an LG device, and finally work on it on your Apple device. So here this interoperability is something extremely critical right now because we are lacking standards. We don't really know how to deal with this. Our devices as well, they need to become more robust. Means retrofittable. That you don't have to dump it after a few years. I mean, look what's happening currently with Meta. This will be, I think, our last topic. It's insane. It's insane that you are paying money for a device that becomes just an expensive brick.
So Jay, if I may, you know, I think it's every company is kind of looking at its core competencies. And as I said, years ago, it was like, well, these are our core companies. We just build everything else we need to be because we have to do it all ourselves. And normally they fell down because it wasn't core competence and couldn't make it that fast. So that partnership. But on Intel, so I was there. And yeah, we bought Recon. Augmented reality, sports, whatever. We brought out a version for energy and warehousing and. Now this is 12, 14 years ago. So the technology was completely different to what we have today. Now back then it was like, God, this is cool, right? And you'll find videos of me cycling around and demoing it and whatever. But I'll tell you what the big, now, and granted, the technology was nowhere near where it was today and yada, yada, yada. But I'll tell you the eye-opening thing for me back then, we were around taking it out to energy companies. And they were going, oh, you can pull up the checklist and whatever. And they were like, God, this is great. And they said, so we've got all the manuals for the guys, and we've hundreds of them, and we can put them on here in PDFs. You can. And I said, where are the manuals today? And they said, they're in those shelves over there. They were in ring binders. They didn't have PDF versions. The people that gave them the binders didn't even have PDFs. So I was this kind of, God, if I had all the stuff in a PDF, I could use it, but I can't. My point being is that it's not just the device and the profitability of it and the technology of it. It's kind of, how do I feed it? Now, Apple might have done a clever trick with their camera. You can record on your iPhone and watch it in your headset. You know, so you're kind of creating consumption, right? So you're fixing that. Now, in the world I live in, we talk about VR for training, and one of the challenges I've always been talking about is that today in energy or in industrial, you want to create VR training, AR training. You kind of take a snapshot of your whatever you're doing today. You kind of ship it off somewhere. Someone builds an app or does something with it. They come back 3 or 4 months later. Everyone goes great, but it doesn't look like what we have because we changed what we have. So in the ideal world, whatever you get trained on looks exactly like what it is today. Digital twin. I was at Distributech last week. Almost everybody, Siemens, ABB, GE Vernova, yakety yak, startups, everyone was talking about, we're just building digital twins. Now, digital representation, they're this, that, and the other. The underlying feature with all that to get a digital twin is they have to go, we have to get our data better. Our data's not great. And Gen AI always train all our language models. And it's like, well, if we train them on crap data, AI is not going to be that clever. But if I may, if all of these companies bring out some of that best technology for mixed reality, augmented reality, whatever reality, and the underlying infrastructure can't feed it, they're still going to fail in the industry. So there's kind of two things happening in parallel. We need all the new cool devices, but we got to get the data, we got to get the digital twins, and munge them together. And then over the next 3 or 4 years, I think we'll see a lot of changes. Because the other thing that was the big thing with people was, how the hell do we visualize all this stuff? There's more and more data coming at us, and the AI's telling me to look at this, and alarms and control rooms, and it's like I can't deal with it on screens anymore. I need some better way of immersive experience. So, but it's not going to happen tomorrow morning.
And what you need is, of course, not just the cool tech. You need as well to think about all of this stuff from a different angle, especially when it comes into XR, because we cannot have any kind of floating keyboards in front of you and to type how you've. It's you like it. I know you like it. You have a typewriter, and mostly the responsible ones, the responsible project managers, do not think the next steps. Their techie people tell them that you need a different UI, that you need this, you need that. When we've been talking about the example of Intel, they had so many cool stuff. They even had a far advanced AI system called Saffron. They fucked it up. They dumped it immediately, never released it, which is something, so you are burning money. Siemens the same. I am an ex-Siemens guy. We've been talking about Siemens like it's a huge bank that just pretends to do something else. They have lots of money. The thing is, if you are too big, if you don't really have competition, then you are busy with what I call industry masturbation. You invent something and then you don't feed it anymore until someone else comes with a better copy, delivers something, and they completely outrun it. Siemens is the perfect example for this. They've been superior in one thing and then dropped it. So
I agreed. And in Intel, we went into drones and we went into all sorts of. And you know what, Jay? We got out of drones, but drones became ubiquitous. And every time somebody did a drone survey, there was a lot of data. And guess what? Someone bought another data center. And guess what? We sold a lot of chips. So we weren't that stupid. So, but my point being is, look, you go back in history and how many people had cool technology and dropped the ball, right? And there was guarantee you could write a book on every company. But it is fascinating with the partnerships now. Now, let's see, they might, I don't know, not be friends next month and the whole thing falls apart again. But I think there's more and more, I'm staying on my core competence and I have to get partners. And then it's a game of chess, right?
Until your core competence starts to disappear. This is what happens in the automotive. The classic automotives are so over-focused on combustion engines that they completely lose everything else. But not talking about mobility.
No, but that's a great example, Jay, because, this is a market-making opportunity. And, I probably say this too much, but, things like GDPR, think electric vehicles. the automotive industry is so powerful that they managed to lock down electric vehicles coming onto the market for decades after we had the technology. But it wasn't until consumers finally put their foot down and said, all right, like, let's create a market for this. And until consumers care about this technology, start to build a vision about how they want to leverage this, and we're forgetting about the algorithmic elephant in the room, which is AI and our AI agents that are going to power all this. That's going to require another layer of complex technology to manage, and security and privacy. And it's sort of this endless morass of technology. But I do think it's important for consumers to educate themselves just a little bit and care and have an opinion. Because until consumers, until we get to that, Jennifer, you mentioned bring your own device. Yeah, but nobody really, in terms of, global market of electronics, really has these devices.
And by the way, Kevin, AI, the big elephant in the algorithmic room.
No, the algorithmic elephant in the room. Let's get the.
It's amazing that Intel is still solvent, right? Given all the things, amazing.
Buy Nvidia stock, and I'm not. That's not actual financial advice, people.
It would have been good. It would have been good financial advice 12 months.
It would have been. You could have bought it in January and still made a killing. So.
Meanwhile, in the real world, hey, should have bought Bitcoin.
You guys can all. I'm going to buy a house next to you, Kevin, in the south of France.
That's brilliant. And sort of taking it back from what is Meta's probably biggest news, that was the strategic partnership over the past few months. If we take it back a few steps, and we think about Oculus, that's the brand that really started what Meta is today. If it wasn't for Oculus, there'd still be a social media company, to be honest, or at least something much more equivalent to that. And news came out fairly recently that Meta is set to delete all Oculus accounts and data. And I think it's quite interesting because while some might see that as some smaller news, that has larger technical implications in their legacy devices. However, I think it's also interesting to think this is probably going to be the last real wave of anything Oculus we're going to have. And considering that I would be able to say off the top of my head how many years ago it was when it was a Kickstarter project to Meta buying it out, Meta changing their entire business brand and approach to leverage immersive technologies, that's quite amazing. And what I would assume is not even 15 years or so. So that broader story is quite interesting. And if we are thinking about this total ubiquity that Amy, you sort of brought up earlier, which would be, maybe realistically 10 to 15 years, that brand is going to be alive of a rather small portion of this technology's lifespan. It would be the equivalent of perhaps early computer developers in the 80s and 90s. Are those companies still remembered? By experts? They are, 100%. But Jennifer, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on Oculus. Perhaps what legacy will it leave? And do you have any thoughts on Meta deleting Oculus accounts and data?
Wow. Yeah. Loaded question, right? I mean, I think for those of us that have been in the space for quite some time, as well as the early adopters of Oculus, I think this is a little bit puzzling, right? What does this mean? What does it mean for me in terms of, value of being an early adopter in the space? What does it mean with regards to my data? And I think it also brings up, by the way, a whole interesting piece around data ownership that I think is going to become even more prolific as we move through this journey together. Who does own the data? Should users own the data? Right? It gets back to that whole concept around multiple devices, multiple applications, multiple pieces of software. And really at the end of the day, specifically for consumers, but also for people that are using XR technology to be able to learn new skills, to be able to demonstrate the skills that they've gained in immersive experiences and all of that. From an IEEE perspective and from my personal perspective, we are huge advocates not only around the interoperability of the data, but also the transparent nature of the data, and more specifically, user ownership. And so I'm disappointed to see, that users apparently have. I mean, I think there's something where they can download some piece, but I'm not even entirely sure, interoperability wise, what that actually means, I think it's disappointing, right? That we're not necessarily valuing users' access to their own data.
It's disrespectful. This is something that is it's quite heavy. I mean, I gave away my Oculus after Zook tried to force me to get a Facebook account instead of an Oculus account. This is where I simply gave it away. The thing is, I'm expecting in the, let's say, next 5 years that the European Union will stop such experiments, where it will be stated if you discontinue a product, which in fact this is, you have to guarantee the customers that they still somehow can use it. So your data transparency plus make some kind of open source, yada yada, whatever, that your time back expensive buy is not just an expensive break. And the mighty Zook sees us humans as lab rats. This is the only thing how I can frame it, because when you then read other headlines like Meta will start collecting anonymized data about Quest headset usage, this is the next thing. So here you can be sure the data that was in your Oculus account is transferred into the overall Meta. It's just up to you how you use it, how where you been willing simply to register at the new account and so on. So here this is quite a dangerous development, especially when we look back when they reframed or renamed themselves towards Meta, where there was this kind of promise that interoperability, multimodality, yada yada, and so on and so on. And this is simply, it was a lie, period.
I mean, just to kind of piggyback off that again and bounce off of you, it's hard, right? Because when we saw social networks kind of come to the forefront, that's really, I feel like, the point in which, users became the product instead of the other way around, right? I feel like it would be very disappointing given the promise that XR has. IEEE's tagline is advancing technology for humanity, right? I think there's a huge opportunity to leverage XR in the benefit of humanity, but I'm very concerned about using the metaphor from social media and social platforms whereby we become the product instead of the user.
But there is a responsibility on our side as consumers, not only to kind of push on regulators for more controls, but we actually have to, and I don't think we're ever going to own our data. I think those days are over, but I think we can manage our data. And I think there are certain, I think there's an entire economy around our managing our data. And then, it's like essentially we have our own database. It's a database query, right? And it's a request for data. It should have a time to live. At some point, this is such a massive amount of data. If we can create safeguards and mechanisms where if we do release data for a specific purpose, that it does not live on that server for, in perpetuity, that we give it a time to live and then it's removed. And that's also going to help us kind of manage this, massive amount of data that's coming, that is mind-boggling. That's even just coming off these devices themselves, the biometric data alone. And this is Meta we're talking about. I mean, they are in the data harvesting and selling business, right? And so the level of data that is can be gleaned from eye tracking and headsets and body movements and our emotional response to things is tremendous, and that is going to be there. If we don't complain and we don't say we need more control over how this is used. But I think you're right. I think in light of GDPR and in light of people starting to really understand the value of their own data, I think we will start to see much more regulation coming down. But again, we have to do the work to manage that data, and that's not going to be simple. And this is where the AI agents come in, and we're going to have our personal database and so forth. Bring your own data instead of bring your.
The thing is that social media just learns about you according to what you like, what you comment on, and so on, where they can really read out of this and prepare for what kind of political interest do you have, what is your sexual orientation, what yada 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 yada. with XR related data, they also get data about your virtual interaction with others. So this is really a heavy spy on you. This is like, let's say, if the NSA or any other clandestine services is simply observing you. This is stalking.
Yeah, I mean, to Amy's point, I think, there are standards emerging. Like, for example, on the IEEE side, we have an emerging standard, the Learner and Employment Record standard, which essentially is an ability to the point that everyone's making, be able to see your data and manage what institutions you decide to share that data with that's been collected through all of these experiences. So, I mean, I'm encouraged to see that there is some engagement in the standard space, but honestly, I mean, I would love to see more people get involved in standards and the creation of standards, because, I mean, they're freely available and anybody can join a working group to build these standards out. That sounds great and wonderful, but at the end of the day, sometimes it's hard for people, to find people that can give their time to make that happen. But on top of regulation, I mean, those standards need to be there in place so that regulators have something, as a North Star to kind of guide the regulation.
Yeah, I mean, we're being observed. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, I was just in Qatar, and every time I travel to the Middle East, the only way, I mean, they scan your face on the way into the country. And now, weirdly, because I have hard lenses, and this is also why I can't use Apple Vision Pro without, the $800 Zeiss lenses, they can't scan my eyes because it refracts the light in a way that, and so I stand there for 15 minutes. I try and explain to them. So that is my way of escaping being in their, facial registry. But, like that scan now is out there, and that will be accessible to other entities, certainly in the region, and maybe will start to be global. United Airlines is now asking very nicely, like, oh, hey, if you'd like to sail through security, you could just do a little facial scan, and so like that ship has sailed. But I do think that there is a point, we're not gonna be able to just draw a line in the sand and go, okay, delete all of our data off your servers, but we can start to pull it back and manage it and start to build the interface that allows users to understand more simply. Like the Apple, it's genius. Ask app not to track. Who's saying, oh, sure, please track me? Like no one is, right? So but it needs to be it needs to be black and white. It needs to be really simple because we're all busy. Social media has taught us to have, the attention span of goldfish. So it's got to be simple.
There is an additional factor. Majority of the semiconductors come from China. So this awareness of, do our people collect data and what is somehow bypassed and goes somewhere where we don't see it anymore? So this kind of awareness is currently rising and is being questioned.
Okay, that's another rat hole. And let me park that one for a second. Look. So look, whatever, you'll be sick of hearing me say this. Like, technology is the easy bit. And technology enables fascinating things. Human nature hasn't changed, so someone will find a way of doing interesting things. And you don't have to go to the Middle East. I flew to Orlando through the UK last week. Now, biometric passport, walk up to the automatic machine, thing straight through, 30 seconds. Brilliant. They took my photo. Right? I got into Orlando, no queue, automatic machine, grand. They took my photo. So everyone's doing it, right? In my village here in south of France, there's cameras everywhere. So if something bad happens, cops will go back, play the thing, whatever. Bad guy gets put away. So that's going on. I suppose back to the Oculus thing. I think Oculus will be remembered. They certainly pioneered a lot of this stuff when a lot of people said this is a waste of time. Meta took them. To be quite honest, it makes logical sense for them to get rid of a parallel ecosystem, accounts, management, yada yada. I know people in industry that were saying, I won't use a Meta account on my Oculus. I'll use an Oculus account. That they didn't kind of say, well, you've got X amount of months to move and go away. So that kind of blocked them in some of the industries I work in, because they said, no, I'm not getting a Meta account for my corporation. So look, I'm guessing they gamed that out. That's their business decision. I agree with you, Jay. There has to be regulation on some of this, because if we just let capitalism run its course, then, as I say, human nature hasn't changed. Someone will find interesting things. But in terms of the Oculus brand, will it go away? Any of you remember this? Right? I started out my career with Compaq. We were PC manufacturer number 7 on the planet. We became number 1. Then Dell had our lunch, and we got bought by HP. Gone. Welcome to the technology world, right? The brands come and go. But yeah, I think a lot of us will still refer to that, but time moves on. But I agree that and the EU will probably lead the way on some of this stuff, or kind of plot its way through some of it. With the GDPR, we saw that. Everyone thought it was a bad idea. No, it's kind of the de facto standard in the world, right? So kudos to the EU.
There is one difference if just a Compaq disappears, or if Sun Microsystems is not anymore, or Silicon Graphics, and so on. This is one thing. Just hardware disappears, but if you have it physically, you can still use it. But if your service disappears, and remember, for example, the Onki Overdrive, these cool slots without slot, yada yada, where you could trace with it. As soon they turned off the cloud service, it's just an expensive break. If you had a cool Sony game on your PlayStation 3 and so on, and they simply disabled the cloud service, then you play. And this is one of the things that if a company decides that it's not profitable anymore and they turn on the kill switch, the stuff that you've paid for becomes useless. You have this danger in your devices. If it's small one, if it's a bigger one. A dishwasher company now started to think about to do it as a service. Companies, automotives, I mean, come on, a subscription for seat heating in your BMW, who pees in their brains? And this is really something, it will be regulated. Remember Renault with their Zoe, where you bought a car, but you had to lease the battery. If you sell your car to second-hand to someone else, I mean, you live in France, you know this, and Renault simply demanded that you, as the second-hand user, still use the leasing contract. So, of course, I mean, I don't do this, right? So they turned off remotely your battery. The law is quite clear, and it was regulated. You can't do this because a BMW would not come into your garage and take out the combustion engine just because you've not, and so on. So this is really something currently we still will see a peak on this, how we deal with your data, how we'll deal with these services, what you've paid for. And it will reach a break-even, it will reach at a tipping point where any kind of regulation, if it's in the US, if it's in Europe, where they will say, no, you can't deal with your customers like this anymore.
I would agree, but I think, in fairness, I'm not sure many of those business models were done maliciously. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Then there was unintended consequences, and then the regulators caught up a couple of years later. And I don't see that changing. Granted, if someone is going, the evil plot, we've always set out to do this, and then that needs to be stamped out or get.
We're literally going to have to simulate all of these business models, and then so we can figure out the outcomes and what the unintended consequences are early.
Well, look at, if I may, some people would say to you, do you want to solve data sovereignty and your data? Then Web3, tokenize everything. Then you get into the whole tokenomics and whatever, right? So,
just cause and effect, and what we're really not good at is effect. We are very, very poor at effect. We're very good at cause.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. And I think even from a sustainability perspective, there's an effect, right? Particularly as people amass all these devices that no longer have connectivity, what happens to those devices, right? I mean, I think there's a broader impact there too.
Cloud, right? The cloud is are massive data centers around the world consuming massive amounts of power. It's like we have these kind of visions in our head of like how all this works, but the infrastructure is expensive to create and elevate and manage and run, especially from an ESG standpoint. And so we have to start thinking much more efficiently. We have to start thinking about reusable assets, and we have to stop being such a consumable throwaway society. But again, it all starts with everybody caring a little bit more about outcomes. Like whatever the thing is that you care about, right? You mentioned it. It's like you want to, go on data sovereignty. Great. You want to join a standards body? We will have you.
This is Jennifer, how you've said it already. Things need to change. We need to this longevity, robustness, yada yada. And this is, for example, what I enjoy when I deal with any kind of defense, that they have this platform thinking. Take, for example, the B-52. It's this bomber built or taken into service in 1952. Right now, it's 72 years in service. It will be the first thing that will be in service for 100 years. And this is, if we can learn from this destructive part and roll it out into our economy, leaving the quantitative economy towards a quality economy. When, let's say, the business model currently for an average automotive is to sell you shit every 3 years new. If you could simply have your beautiful 50-year-old Volvo whatever, and you can simply retrofit it so that it could become electric, it could become connected if you want it, if it could drive by itself, or if you want to drive it, and so on and so on, having surround view, yada yada. So this kind of retrofitability, software defined, this is the key to a sustainable future, where you simply keep your products, you can upgrade them, and do not waste anything.
It's like gaming. We reskin. I said it's like gaming. We're just going to reskin everything. Like everything's going to be forward.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, there's the output part of it in terms of, devices you can't do anything with, but then there's also the input, right? A lot of our scarce materials that are inputs into these things can become even more scarce as we continue forward. And I mean, that has huge impacts on us as a society.
And our society does not recycle. The recent report about what kind of scam it is with plastic recycling, that just 8% overall was ever recycled, and then it's just second grade. It's incredible. We are wasting so many opportunities, and chipsets, for example, semiconductors, you can reuse them.
But are you agree? No. Time out. There was a thing that followed news in Ireland. They brought out a new recycling system. And one of the reasons they brought it out, because people say, we were all recycling stuff and putting it in the yellow bins. And there was some statistic came out, and it was like, 40% of the stuff that goes into the yellow bins has to be incinerated because it's cross-contaminated. Because the average person is throwing the wrong stuff into that thing. And when the truck comes in, there's nobody sorting it. They somehow scan it and they go, that's contaminated, incinerated. So it's back to human nature. It's all about them and them. No, it's me. It's people, us individuals. Anyway.
No, but you're right. I mean, it is. It goes back to the, my soapbox, which is just like we have to be better. We did teach everyone how to recycle to a degree, but again, it has to be black and white or green or yellow, has to be simple, and still we don't get it right. So my point is like where can we leverage technology to basically shore up some of our own stupidity and shortcomings. I use it all day long. Like I have alarms going off on my phone all day long. Otherwise I'd miss meetings. I'd get into like research mode and then I would just blow right through a meeting. So I've got to, so I use technology to buoy my shortcomings, right? We need to be able to make that
Absolutely. It comes out, like I said before, advancing technology for humanity, right? For humanity, I think is the key, right? Not humanity as the product, but for humanity.
Yeah, we need this kind of guardian that observes us in a very, very, let's say, careful way, does not share it. No, 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 no. Hold on, hold on. No, it's about our own. In German, we call it the inner Schweinehund, the inner pig. The thing is, even if we, let's say, look to a resource that can be 100% recycled, which is glass. Glass is one of the few things that you can fully recycle that does not become worse with every step and so on. Only 7% are being recycled because it's cheaper to make it new instead of recycling it. So it's the economy, it's our inner pig, and because we right now live in a time, I'm not believing into God, whatever. In the past, in the medieval, it was quite easy to say, God see you. If you are doing whatever, then you will burn in hell. This does not work anymore. So having your alarm, your smart reminder, your please don't bring in some kind of a social credit system like in China. This would be completely disastrous because I would be the first one who tries to hack it. But we need some kind of consensus, some kind of agreement, and some kind of, we need to change our mindset. We need to go away from this economy of buying shit again and again and don't give a damn about it, but really to focus on quality. If you keep your stuff, if you pay attention to your stuff, because then you can upgrade it, you can have it the latest hot shit around, then
Yeah, I mean, I think there's responsibility on the consumer side, but I would hope that there's a sense of responsibility and accountability on the tech side too, right? With regards to, as we've all talked about, how we're engineering these things, what the intent actually is. I mean, I think XR is a really exciting space because it's just becoming, right? And I think it's really important for providers in the space, no matter where you are in the ecosystem, to do your part in terms of, building products, applications, services, all of those kinds of things, that contribute rather than detract, right? I mean, yes, I mean, it gets back to Kevin's point around human nature, right? We can do all these things and we can educate people and everything else, but where's the responsibility or accountability on the company side, right? To help create solutions that kind of account for the propensity to maybe not do exactly what it is that we even intend to do as humans. I mean, we're imperfect, right?
Well, but that's a challenge though, because we can't trust the companies to be responsible. They have, they'll spend more money on teams of people to figure out how to get around the things they're supposed to do than they will spending on teams to just do what they're supposed to do. So we just have to be smart. And actually, if Kevin can move a little bit to the right, we can meet our soon-to-be new overlord. We're all going to become pets of our AIs if we're not careful, because they'll look at us and go, what the hell are you people doing? It's like, pull yourself together.
I think it's fantastic to sit back and listen to this, really, because there's so much to learn from everyone's insight here. You're all speaking from such a unique and such a leading perspective here. There's so much to be taken from what was a question about Oculus data. There was so much to unpack there in all reality. So, that's an insight that's completely unique. But no, it's absolutely fantastic. I can learn so much from listening to this, and there's so much there that is a part of data and ensuring our data safety. But there's one more point I really wanted to bring up here, and it's based on the fact that we have such a good lineup of individuals speaking here today, and that the past 20 minutes have just proved that in all reality. And I would like to talk about the XR Awards briefly. Amy, Kevin, Jay, you're all part of it this year, and we thank you so much for being on board with the XR Awards. And it'd be really interesting, just before we close off, is to learn a little bit about your involvement. You're all judges this year, and perhaps what's the importance of having a industry focus on some of the use cases that are bringing up this year, such as construction, healthcare, industry, etc.
Yeah, I really enjoy it for a number of reasons. One is it's nice to kind of see, you know, what the pulse is and what people have been working on, especially when they're companies that young companies that you know were just not on my radar. And I would say that one of my favorites is actually Person of the Year, because it's always written by somebody else, sort of nominating them, and you know the stories of, you know, just how passionate they are and how hard they're working to create better outcomes. You know, I think it's great, and I think this might be my third or fourth year now. It's been a few, and you know, I'm gonna keep signing up. So I love it.
It's always important for me, for my own work, to be part of these kind of judging sessions. So to get a sneak preview on all of these startups that are applying before we select them. Of course, there are some usual suspects that I see from event to event where I just by their name scratch them off because I know it's bullshit. But mostly it's really very exciting to get, even if they don't make it into the final round, to have these players and to put them on your own watch list, because you never know. And normally just by reading blogs, scanning through LinkedIn and so on, I would not discover that many really cool startups and ideas and founders like through these events.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for that. And thank you all, Jennifer, Amy, Kevin, Jay. Thank you so much for your time today. We've had such a great conversation. Again, it's so great to have such an engaged group of industry professionals really chatting about this. You're all leaders in this space, and this conversation is absolutely invaluable to our readers. So thank you all so much. For our readers, that's it from myself and my wonderful lineup of guests. You can get more news by subscribing to our XR Today news channel and by following our social pages. I'm Rory Green from XR Today. Thank you again so much for watching.